Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Joe's Arcade. If you remember from last time, I had just kind of fiddled with this texture for like an hour to finally get these ceiling tiles to look kind of nice, at least as nice as I think I can get them to look. Today, we're kind of going to keep going down that path, and I'm going to try to get the wall textures in. Um, Quick digression, I'm going to listen to Rising Sun by Takuya Kuroda, which is kind of a cool jazz album. That's the music of the video. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is the textures that we're going to be trying to make here. So that is going to be coming out of some of these. Let me move that out of the way. Pictures that I've got here of this sort of paneling that's running vertically on the walls. I've got a fair number of pictures. I think I'm going to just pick one that looks decent and try to make our texture off of that. So I'm thinking this one, well, let's open them up in GIMP here like before and really pick off of that. So I do have GIMP open already. One of the neat things about SketchUp is you don't actually need to have a square texture. I know I did that last time with the ceiling tiles, but it doesn't limit you to that, so I'm probably not going to create a square texture in this case, just because it's going to be, I think I can get a better result by not doing that. But we'll see. I could end up going the complete opposite way of what I'm thinking. So I'm not planning to use these vertical textures, so I'm gonna just go ahead and grab these three. I think it's three. Yeah, these three that don't have a tape measure in them and are looking decent. And let's see. I was gonna try to control tab through these here, but that doesn't work in GIMP apparently. I'm gonna try it anyway. Yeah, no, it doesn't work. So let's see. This one is probably the straightest on picture, but I know now that I should be able to correct that. This one doesn't look half bad, but the light looks a little more washed out in the middle. This one's pretty similar to the first. So this one actually might be my best bet. Just looking at it, there's a little bit of a gradient in the light. Obviously, it's brightest in the center, but it does look like it's a little darker on this end. And obviously, this piece has got some shadows on it. So I think I'm going to try to take kind of like this area and make that into my texture zone. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to give that a go here. So I'm going to start by dragging this guide out to there and to there. And then similar to before, I'm going to try using that perspective tool. Ooh, something's going on here. Can't do that. Ooh, I think I probably need to have a. Nope. Yeah, that was it. That was what I should have been doing. I'm gonna use this perspective tool to try to align this a little better. And as before, this might get a little bit messy. This is only my second time trying to do this, but it turned out to be pretty simple the first time through. Seemed like it worked out at least. And this time I kind of only have the one direction that I'm looking to get right, although I don't like what it's doing there. It's creating these kind of jagged looks to the centers of the seams in those panels. So I'm kind of just trying to, oh, look at that. I didn't really fool around with this thing as much as I could have before. Now I'm sort of doing that. Holy cow, that's nuts. All right, we're not going to do that. Yeah, basically I just want to straighten these up a little bit and also see if I can keep the middle of the picture looking okay. So far I kind of am failing at that. Yeah, I'm gonna bow out of that operation and try again. Just not quite looking how I wanted, and it's hard to see where it went wrong. So looking at it here, they're not actually as straight as maybe, as clean looking there in the middle as I had originally thought. So maybe it just is how the picture is, Just taking a look. If there's one thing I don't want to do right away, right off the bat, it's just totally mess up this whole deal. So anyway, fresh start, Shift P, and let's see what can be done here. Got that looking nice and straight. Like that. That doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look amazing. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being grumpy over super tiny things, but I'd like the middle to look a little nicer. I think this helped. I don't want these to bow in or anything like that, which is definitely a risk of warping the picture like this. But I'll go ahead and hit transform. And hey, it looks like a million times better. So it's just the preview not looking super awesome. Wow, yeah, that looks really sharp actually. So now I'm going to grab my selection tool, and it looks like that'll actually snap to these grips, which is pretty cool. Didn't know that before, but I'm going to drag it back here a little bit to be in the middle of this seam. And a little bit more towards the middle of that seam, because I want the seams to be right up, half and half for kind of a nice transition, hopefully. As I ramble on about that, let's just go ahead and point out what I forgot, which is what I always forget, which is I can't crop like that. I need to use the crop tool. So let's go ahead and start redefining this selection space with the crop tool. One of these days I'll remember that. I could always do like a cut and paste into a new image or something like that, but yeah. So one of the things that may turn into an issue here, and I'm going to just pull it into SketchUp and see how it really comes out, is that there is sort of this wood grain pattern to these panels. And is that gonna match up real nice between the top and bottom of the texture? That's hard to say. In fact, I suspect it's not going to, but I might have a trick up my sleeve here to get that to work. I'm gonna save this as wall panels. I don't actually know what material this is, so if anybody happens to know, let me know. I'd love to learn. I'm gonna save that though, wall panels, and I'll come back here over to SketchUp. Let's go to my materials home, and I'll define a new texture, wall panels. I want to use a texture image, which I have not exported yet. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll just export this wall panels PNG. It's taking a little bit to export here, which is reminding me it's probably a little bit higher definition than I need it to be. So I'll bring it into SketchUp, see how it looks, and if it looks okay right off the bat, highly unlikely if you ask me, then I might look at just reducing the resolution a little bit, because that is a pretty huge image that I've got here. It's like 2000 by 1000 something. But I'll bring that in. Hit OK. And moment of truthiness. There it is. And it looks like one of them is darker than the rest. But that might look okay, potentially, depending on how this comes out. So I want to go to texture position here, and I'm going to start by making it, scaling it in this direction. That looks okay. You can see that real glaring difference there between the top and bottom of the texture. I'm going to scale it up and move the origin point down just like somewhere in here. I'm going to scale this guy up so that I don't have that vertical break. I don't even have to deal with it then. And we'll see how this looks. I would say that looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with that. The one thing I'm not crazy about is our one darker panel. And that even is not so bad. When there's stuff in front of it, I don't think it'll be as noticeable. But I think the one other thing that I want to do to kind of decide how that is really going to look here is I do have some reference images of what this thing looks like. We've got a tape measure up against it. So I'm going to compare that to how large I've actually scaled it up on the wall here. So you can see this large panel here, I think, is the one that's next to the darker one. Let's see, there's like a swirl, a knot here, and a wavy thing there by the top. I know that's vague, but that's what I'm seeing. And yeah, I kind of see the wavy thing and a little bit of maybe that knot here in the darker. So this piece here, that is this piece in the reference image. So I can look here and I can see 16 to 24. That's 8 inches. That's how wide that piece is. And so I'm going to just draw something that's 8 inches. And moving that over, it actually looks like I have scaled this thing pretty close just by eye. And so what this means is I'm not going to have to shrink these down to be actual size, where this will be repeated a whole bunch of times. Yeah, so that's a good thing. So let's go back to GIMP here and I will create a new layer because I want to tweak this just a little bit. I'll create a new layer and I will give it, let's go with 40.6% opacity. And I'll call it lightning. So what I'll do is I'll take just one of these lighter panels. I'll sample that color. And I'm gonna take, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Again, definitely not like a registered GIMP professional or anything like that. But I'm going to put a selection over pretty much just this one strip. And I'm going to lighten that one panel just a little bit. Now that looks a little bit too light and washed out, so I'm going to adjust this opacity down until it looks nice. About 10.8% precisely looks pretty good there, actually. I think I can be happy with that. Let's go ahead and save. And I will do an export to PNG. Replace that guy. Give it a second to export here. Or a few seconds, as the case may be. Good thing I got some smooth jazz going on in the background. Keep me entertained during this loading period. Okay, now back to SketchUp. We're going to edit this texture by just refreshing wall panels. And yeah, that made a pretty subtle difference there, but it did make a difference. I'm happy with that. I think this looks pretty sharp. I gotta be honest, I was not expecting this to be such a straightforward process. Including that this scaling is more or less correct. So that's awesome. Now then, I'm just going to apply this to the rest of the walls. And get a couple details correct here. So let me see. I want to drag this guy just a little bit in that direction. Let's see, hopefully I've got enough space to get what I'm going for here, which is there's no seam there, and that's okay. This seam is right on on our corner detail there, whatever you would call that, our corner strip. That looks pretty good. It kind of looks like a little shadows falling in there. Ooh. And let me go into my layers here, make this a little bit easier on myself. I'll go back to walls. I'll turn off the ceiling, and I'll turn off. I want the details on. But yeah, now I just need to go to town. So I will put the texture on there, put the texture on there, and I'll put the texture on there. And again, that kind of, you know, just kind of looks horrible. So let's fix that up. Put an 8-inch line. I don't want to do that in the group. I want to do it out of the group. So let's put an 8-inch line there. Let's put an 8-inch line there. And one there. Now I'll jump into this thing. Let's position this. First thing I want to do is get my horizontal scale correct. So there's the start of our 8-inch panel. And it's pretty faint, but you can kind of see that line in there. And I would say needs to be just a little bit bigger. Yeah, that'll do. Now I've got that. I'm going to drag this point just kind of off here. And then I will scale it up. Make it just a little bit taller than it needs to be. Double check that this is correct, and that does look right. So delete that guy. I think because I'm going so extreme on the vertical scaling of this, I am going to leave the texture resolution as high as it is. If it causes problems in the future, I can always come back and try to do something to correct that, but I don't want this to pixelate any more than it already is. You know, and it kind of loses some of the detail of that wood grain effect, but it's not a super doable task, I don't think, to try to get that to line up perfectly, or it would take, you know, like days of photo editing, which unfortunately I don't have. So yeah, more or less going to go with this and leave the texture as is. Let's do our next face here. One thing I just thought of that I can do to make this even easier is that next one was 4 inches. So I can align my origin to that. And that's just going to make this process a little bit simpler. I can drag this thing out to line up like that. And there's the start of the 4 and the seam and 8 inches. And And now I can put that thing back down to this corner here. Do some liberal scaling. That looks pretty nice. And our last wall here. Almost forgot my method I just discovered. Where's my texture context menu? There we are. Just takes an extra second to line it up this way, I suppose. Okay, there we are. And I'll drag this thing out. Oh, something crazy is going on with the view here. Oh my. Okay, I don't know about that. Whatever's happening, not so great. Let's put a stop to that. This is fascinating. Okay, I think we're back in action. Took me just I don't know, it was like a 3D mouse malfunction, so I unplugged it, plugged it back in, and blew on it a little bit. Hopefully that'll resolve the issue, which it seems to have done. Get some contrast in here so I can really see where this line is. I think I've got it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And move my texture. Got that vertical edge where I want it. And voila. And that looks pretty good too. Okay. So from up high like this, it looks kind of weird, but if you're actually looking at the room, I'd say that looks pretty good. A little SketchUp Steve over here, just hanging out in the corner still. He's been there since probably like the first episode. I'm gonna move him to here, just because. All right. Well, that is gonna wrap this up for now. We'll be back in the near future with some more information. I think I'm gonna make a field visit to the arcade actually to get a couple more details that I've been wishing I had, and we'll keep moving on. I hope you enjoyed. This is kind of a weird outro. Bye.